Hey, hello, Prajul. Good evening.
Hi, so there was this event going to happen today, right?
Yes. We will just start by 6:10 mostly. So we are waiting for others to join. Hey, hello, everyone. Good evening. So guys, we will wait for next 10 minutes. We will start the session by 6:10. Okay, we are waiting for others to join. Okay, I think we can start the session. So, guys, very good evening to one and all gathered here. And this is our second version of product feature workshop. And we have our speaker, Mr. Aravind. He's the co-founder of LI2 Technologies, and he's working on this field for the past 10 years, and he's a veteran personality. So, welcome, Aravind. Welcome to our second version of feature product feature flow workshop. And then, by the way, I know it's your birthday, so many more happy returns of the day, Mr. Aravind. Yeah, over to you, Aravind.
Thank you. Thank you, Madan. Um, Good evening. Are we expecting more participants now, or you think we can start?
I think we can start, Aravind. Yeah.
Okay. Let's wait for a couple of more minutes and then start. Is that okay? 6:10 we'll start.
Yeah, sure, sure, fine. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Arvind, and we are about to start the session on product features and workflow, essentially to kind of look at how we go about designing our problem statements and convert that into a more specific uh, direction. That is, we all have ideas, we all have, where we want to implement our projects and solutions. And then how do we go about these things, right from identifying what's the core issue, whom are we trying to address this problem, right up to how the product flow should be and how the value proposition or the benefits that we offer the end users are translated in a more effective manner. So this is the broad workshop agenda that we have for today. And incidentally, we had a very similar session that we did over the last 3 days. We had good participation, and I am looking forward to a good workshop here for the next 3 days from today, right? So as Akhil just mentioned, I've been in entrepreneurship for the last decade or so, more so focusing on product design, embedded systems, education, and so on and so forth. And we some time ago we developed indigenously a 3D printer called as Brahma 3, which we currently have put out in the market. One of the pioneers in this field in 3D printing. So that's something that we have been working on. So I'd like to share my experiences and the work that I have done over the years in the form of this workshop. But most importantly, what I'd like to share right at the onset is that this is not a workshop where I'm giving you a lot of theoretical knowledge, and you people start to get bored and not find any value. That's not the objective at all, right? I want to make sure that each one of you are able to relate the concepts that we discuss here today with the projects and the assignments, as well as the what you call as if you want to do an entrepreneurship journey, or if you're looking at solutions, problem solving, whatever it is, it should be directly meaningful to you. So that's the thought process behind setting up these workshop series. And this workshop specifically, as I mentioned, is about how do we design the products and how do we take it forward, right? So from that perspective, I'd like you people to quickly introduce yourself, or let me know what are those important things that you would like to learn over the next 2 days in this session, right? So this will help me either to address those points in today's session, or if not, at least tomorrow I can bring up these points. The reason being, you might have so many conceptions about what you want to learn or what you want to know about here, and maybe the workshop flow might not be aligned to that, right? So in order to make it more what you say meaningful to each one of you, I'd like to give an opportunity for you people to, if not speak up, at least type in. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Thank you. Yes. So thank you for your inputs here. Somebody is asking here, is this workshop related to UX? Yes and no, right? So it is a UI UX related workshop, but it is not necessarily about how to do UX design or how to do UI flow, right? It is more about how the problem that you're trying to solve will get addressed through the UI or the product or the features of the product that you develop, right? So you might want to solve something, but you do not exactly know whether it's the best feature to work on or whether you know how to go about it. So this workshop is more related towards how do we get started to identify those core issues of your project, right? So that's the thing. And then there is another question that's come out saying, you know, I want to know while building a product, how do you know you're not overdoing it? Wonderful, wonderful question. And because at times there are hundreds of features and it seems to be helpful, but where does one draw the line? Wonderful, perfect. This is something that we will definitely address today itself, and that is the reason why this workshop is created and designed. So, perfect question. How to reach customers in an efficient way? So this is something that I can talk about, but not necessarily part of this workshop. So there was a workshop that we did some days back called as the business model canvas and entrepreneurship. So in that we very specifically dealt with uh, identifying customer segments, identifying what we call as customer channels, as well as a few few of these elements. But either ways, I will, when we talk about your specific project, either tomorrow or day after, when we discuss about this, we will try to identify ways to reach the customers. In technical terms, we call it as channels on how we go about reaching the customers. So we will talk about it at some stage. There is a question from Om Prakash. I want to ask, can we judge our own progress on the way in startup? Um, Absolutely. I mean, like, it really depends on what you define as progress or success in your startup. If it is about if it's about the growth of the company, or is it if it's about the revenues that you generate? Yes, those are elements that you can very easily track, and not only you but even other people can trace that. But typically the progress of a particular startup is determined by the founders or the vision that you as a founder have, right? So that's where it starts. But more importantly, I think the progress of your company or your idea is essentially dependent on the fact that how many people have you impacted, or how many have benefited from your solutions, right? So that's probably a best way to judge the progress, because the more number of people have access to your solutions, obviously the company is growing. And then you need to sit back and understand whether you are making enough profit, or whether you're able to scale at a pace that you want. So that is a function of how many people you're able to reach. And there are other finer elements like what is your pricing structure, whether you're making profit at all or not. All of these things that are things that you will have to evaluate, because progress is a very subjective term. It is not very specific. Like, how much profit we make is something that we can measure. How much progress we make is like a measure of success. So some companies, for instance, even if you talk of large companies like Flipkart or maybe Uber or something, they probably are not profitable even today. They're making loss. Paytm, for instance, and so many companies in India and globally are still making loss. But then the company has progressed with millions of users and with millions of dollars of revenue also, right? So progress for them is to give the value proposition, make the value proposition available to maximum number of people, irrespective of whether they're making profit or loss, right? So that's the first step they want to achieve, and then they slowly will start converting these customers to pay more or change their pricing structure to make profit, right? So that's typically how we look at businesses. So
Hello,
wonderful. So any other question, please?
hello, sir. As you mentioned that few companies even they make loss. but they are sustaining the market. How they overcome this that loss, maybe to
That's
sustaining
why
the
we have
market?
that is why we have investors, and that is why we have banks and funding agencies, right? So that's how it works. Uh, for instance, if you look at Cred has been funded millions of dollars, and their losses are same as the amount they got funded. And when Uber started, or when Ola started, that's what they do. And most of the companies follow that route because their objective is to first get the users, first test the market, whether the market is there at all or not. Only if the market is there, then they know over the span of 3 4 years they can recover the losses and then make profit and then grow the company, right? Because acquiring the customer is not easy. It's extremely expensive process, right? So that's why they decide to first scale, acquire as many customers, even if it's a loss, and then do the business, right? So that's how it works. That is why we have venture capitalists, but that's why we have funding agencies and things like that, where if your strategy is right, if your direction is right, you could be supported by these kind of investments, right? There's one last question here, and then we can start the workshop. Um, Sir, I had one dilemma. Given an app-based product, how do I go about deciding how many additional features to add, as it may take away the impact of the core problem that you're trying to solve? Yeah, very good question, Prajwal. So it's very similar to the question that Sai Akash has asked. While building a project or a product, how do you know whether you're overdoing it or not? Right? It's very simple actually, and that's precisely what this workshop is about. Great. So with this, let me then jump into my slide and then get started. So this is broadly, how we would want to address this workshop today. Uh, First and foremost, we look at the objectives for the workshop, right? First and foremost, it is the approach. How do we look at what we are trying to do, and what is the way we want to take it forward, right? That's the first thing. And there is a concept called as design thinking that plays a vital role in this thing. Design thinking is a methodology which is a logical sequence of steps that as entrepreneurs or as designers we can take to identify whether we are actually making an impact and whether the solution is viable and whether it can go into the market and be meaningful, right? And then we go out and once we have identified that approach and the problem that we are trying to solve, then we see the users and the data and the user flow, the data flow, how actually the transaction happens in your product or service, which would eventually lead to the value proposition. And then we try and understand, why do we need a particular feature? I mean, that's precisely the question that's going around in this workshop. Already people have asked that question on why do we need a particular feature, or why do we need features of a particular kind in your product or service, right? And then we understand the concept of benefits, and then we go about designing the features of your product. So all of this will be covered today, and there are more things that we will talk about tomorrow, but this forms the basis for the next two sessions, because if you don't get this direction and the concept right, then maybe you will not be able to follow certain things tomorrow, right? So from that perspective, I'd like to again ask you if you have any queries, or I can proceed to my next slide. All right. So now, um, so with respect to product development, typically all of us, start with product development, or when we talk of entrepreneurship or any of these, all of us tend to start with this simple thing called as an idea, right? Everybody thinks that I have a great idea and I want to go out and build something, right? So this is typically how all of us think. And what happens in this process is that the very next step that we take is we go about building the product, right? So you have an idea to build a phone, maybe, and then you land up building an iPhone, right? So is this typically how a project development or a product development works, or is there something missing here? Can somebody tell me? I have an idea and I go about building the product, and then I have this product built, an iPhone. For in this case, I have just put this out. Is this how the process is? I have an idea and I start building my product, and my product is ready. Um, do you think this is the method or not?
Before that, you need to validate the idea.
Okay, okay, very good. We need to validate the idea. Sunil is answering that we need to validate the idea. Anybody else has any opinion here?
And who is users?
Sorry?
Users, all the customers that we need to focus on.
Okay, we need to focus on the users and customers. Very good. So one is market research. Then there is market validation. Somebody is saying, and Sunil is saying a very similar point, in trying to take feedback and improve. Okay. Okay. Then what else?
We need to find whether the customers really require that product.
Very good. We need to find, in the end of the day, the customers actually are benefiting from the solution, right? Does the problem that you're trying to solve. So in fact, let us first translate from the idea to the problem, right? So many times we have ideas, but then ideas are meaningless until unless you know who or what are we trying to address this idea for, right? So from that perspective, uh, we look at the concept of what problem are we trying to solve, right? I think that becomes a bigger question than what idea do we have. Do you understand that? There's a huge difference between these two. Uh, what problem we are trying to address or what problem we are trying to solve versus what idea do we have, right? So if these two are taken together, then an idea follows the problem, right? It's not the other way. You have an idea, you start doing it, and then the idea will go out and solve some problem is not an effective way of doing it, because we do not know where we are heading. We're just building something and doing something. But if you go from the problem statement standpoint, what we want to solve or what is it that we are looking to solve becomes the primary focus. And in order to identify that, we have what we call as design thinking process. So have you people worked through the concept of design thinking, or do you have any idea on what design thinking is about?
I do have a basic idea about design thinking. So it's basically a process where you empathize, then you define the problem, then you ideate it. It's like a five-way thing: ideate, then prototype, and then user testing.
Right,
So
right. Perfect. So that's the steps or sequence of operation, or essentially, it's not a sequence. These are the 4 or 5 blocks that are present in design thinking, and we will talk about it briefly, because I want you people to understand what I mean by empathy here, and what I mean by idea, right? Ideate, or what I mean by uh, validate and test and prototype, right? So from that perspective, yes, Prajwal, you were absolutely right on the broad introduction to design thinking. So, has anybody else worked through design thinking, attended any session on design thinking, or worked through, or you want me to touch upon a couple of points on that, so that we have a context on that? Okay, so Om Prakash says not worked on design thinking or design thinking concepts. Anyway, either ways, if you've worked or not, I still need to talk about it. I feel because without that, this would become a little more in the air, right? So essentially, the word empathy forms the core element of design thinking, and that's where the process of design thinking starts. Right? I'm doing it, Sunil. I am going to explain design thinking in a very, not explain, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the way you can approach a problem, right? That is all I would like to talk. And incidentally, design thinking would play a very good role in identifying the solution or the direction for your problems or solutions that you want to build, right? So, does anybody know what does empathy mean? The word empathy. It's okay, people. I mean, see, you can be wrong or right, doesn't matter. I just want to keep the session as interactive as possible because, without that, it would be definitely boring, right? So, what do you think empathy is?
Understanding others what they mean.
Understanding? No, not really understanding. Mhm.
Maybe the problems that you need to understand what others face. I
Mm,
don't exactly like
Putting you in other people's situation. Yes, I think that's a much better answer in terms of understanding or relating to someone's feelings. Yes. So yes. So it's not necessarily only understanding. That's what I was trying to drive at, right? So it's not just understanding, but also to be able to relate to the fundamental pain or problem as an emotion that you can understand, right? So because that becomes very critical in terms of designing the solution itself, right? Putting ourselves in their situation, obviously not really putting ourselves in the situation, but imagining, right? So for instance, if you talk of doctors or if you talk of essentially doctors mainly, right? Doctors always need to be in a state of empathy, right? Why I say is there are three words. Always you remember and see where you are in these three words while you're designing your product, right? So if you are like a doctor or work like a doctor, then it's almost good. Like a real doctor, how a doctor is supposed to work, or how a lawyer is supposed to work, right? In reality, in general terms, uh, that would be empathy. For instance, apathy. There's a word called apathy or apathy. People call it apathy. That's where you don't have any emotion, any feeling, or any care about what the other person is going through, right? That's apathy, right? Then there is empathy, and there is sympathy, right? Sympathy is where you see somebody in trouble or pain or whatever, and you start feeling, understanding, and experiencing that particular pain, right? So if somebody has experienced death in their family or something, and you go there, you sympathize with them because you feel their emotion, you feel their pain, and also you experience the grief that they are going through. The problem with sympathy is that it's very good for a human bond or a connect, but it does not help you to think logically. It does not help you to think straight on how to make the situation better. Is that clear? So empathy is kind of in between these two, where you clearly know what the person or the people are going through, but at the same time you are steady and you are very very clear on how you can do better in terms of solving their problem, right? So that's very important. So being in empathy is very important. So once you start looking at the problems from an empathy standpoint, it just means one thing, right? You are trying to imagine yourself with the emotion of the end user going through the problem solving stage. Like, what is the problem they're facing? And if I were them, how would I feel and how would I want it to be rectified? If you start looking at everything like that, the solutions become very easy. For instance, right? There might be somebody who is designing a product for a blind person or a disabled person, right? you cannot really design an effective product until unless you can kind of empathize with a blind person and understand the way they would feel or experience certain solutions, right? So that is extremely important. And only then you can go forward. So in design thinking, essentially, as I think somebody, Prajwal or somebody pointed out, these are typically the phases or stages of a design thinking process. And in this, I really can't go through this in detail because this would itself take a couple of hours. But then empathy is the first step. Then you define, ideate, prototype, and test, like how you pointed out before. But then the critical, what do you say, process in design thinking is to empathize and then move towards a definition. And another important thing that you should notice here is that the concept of idea generation, the concept of ideating is somewhere in the middle, right? It is not, and it is not a stable process. It's dynamic. You can see arrows coming in, going out, and stuff like that. It's cyclical. So idea is itself not stable. Idea itself is not the starting point when we really look at scheme of things. So that is what I wanted to point out and bring out here. So you cannot go and say, I have this idea, right? The more powerful way of communication is, this is the problem I am trying to solve, right? So if you can put your communication in that way, it is way more effective. So in design thinking, the primary thing that you do is move from empathy to a definition. What I mean by definition is to be able to clearly articulate the solution to the problem that you're providing in terms of the end user. So you define the problem in terms of how an end user would experience it. If you can define your solutions like that, then it would be way more effective in terms of solving the problem, right? Rather than saying that, this is a 100 GB phone, you go out and say that, you can store a million files and you can store 10,000 songs in this device. So that is defining with terms of the end user. Do you see the difference? And that's precisely what we are going to try to arrive in this workshop, where we define a particular solution in two ways. One, with respect to the end user, how they are going to benefit, and two, with respect to the developer, where in order to provide that benefit, what is it that we need to do and what is that we need to develop, right? A 100 GB phone is a thing that is for the developer. It really doesn't mean anything for the end user, which means that you have not empathized. You've just developed a fancy product. But if you say you can save 10,000 songs, or maybe somebody wanted to save 10,000 songs on their phone, and that is why the problem got created. And that's why you started working and you ideated on the concept of creating a phone with a larger memory and you created it. Do you understand the flow? So it's not about the memory at all. It's about the problem. The problem is that somebody is not able to save songs on their phones, and now with your solution, they can. If you can define your problems that way, it's better off in many ways to design, right? So with this, I think I missed out a point on design thinking. So let's look at design thinking one last time. I think you people are kind of aware about what I mean by empathize, where you start thinking about the problem and, most importantly, talk to the people, not just do interviews, but then you reach out to them, observe them, understand the flow of things that they're currently going through and what problem they're facing. If you can identify these things, only then you can define the problem. So in the first stage, we call the first stage as empathize and define. We look at why. The question why is what we are trying to ask. Why does the problem exist? Why do people have this issue, right? And you start moving towards why, right? And then you start looking at idea and essentially idea and definition, right? Definition and idea is more moving from why to what, right? Empathize is completely why. Define is like a why and what. And then ideate is clearly what, right? So what do we do to solve this problem? What do we do that why don't we do it this way, right? So that what's are the idea phase. Once that is clear, you go to test and prototype. That's how, right? So when we go there, we start to do it in the outside world, do the hows, and get feedback, and then again go back to say, this is not working. So what else can we do? Right? Go back to idea. Keep doing it until unless finally get a solution. But notice one thing: the circular motion of these arrows are not going back to empathy. So empathy forms the foundation principle of design thinking. Why these arrows are not going back to empathy? Can somebody answer? All of these arrows are starting from empathy, maybe, but once you define, you are now moving backwards and forwards only, but not going back to empathy. There's a huge reason for that. Can somebody tell that? Any guesses?
Well, after developing a product, after developing a prototype, you can't able to go to the enterprise.
No, that's not the reason. You can, right? If you can develop a prototype and go back to idea, why not go back to empathize?
Because already I have developed, already I have done actually. Like, you can't go back to that. Because
No, you can go back, but the problem is we already analyzed the problem. That's no, somebody's saying we've analyzed the problem. That's true. But the point is we have identified a certain problem, right? And analyzed it, right? So Arjun is absolutely right. We have identified a problem and analyzed it with respect to the end user. Now, if you're changing that part, that means the problem itself changes, right? The problem itself changes because empathy is just going to identify the problem, nothing else. So identify the problem in a very effective manner. So once you change that, then the whole project itself changes. So it can never happen that way. So empathy is very, very important, right? So with this, now let me go back to just my.
so ideation that we, what exactly those things that we do in ideation, sir? Uh,
In ideation, can somebody answer this question? What do we do in ideation then if you're already finishing your empathy? What's the difference between why do we need ideation? What do we do there?
So I think empathizing is basically just understanding what the problem is or defining is what the problem is, and ideating is having a structured way of solving that problem which you define.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right, Prajwal. And I think you also have Sai Akash giving the same answer. So, Sunil, there is a certain problem. For instance, let me say your empathy is around poverty, right? And you are saying that I want to eradicate poverty, and what can I do, right? So that's the problem statement that you're trying to start, right? That's a very bad definition in the first place because you're not identifying the end user. When you say empathy is about poverty and people who are suffering from poverty, and then definition is I want my project to eradicate poverty. That itself is not a strong definition because you are not still bringing in the end user or the beneficiary into your definition. Until unless you bring that beneficiary into your definition, you will not be able to ideate. You will not be able to find a way to solve the problem. Because what I mean by that, I am going to eradicate or I'm going to look at poverty and see how we can solve it is the direction where the empathy starts. You meet thousands of people and or you research and you find something. Then you go out and define, I'm going to what you call as eradicate poverty. No, that is not going to help. You can then go and say, I am going to, or we are going to focus on people below poverty lines, and we are going to provide free education to their children, right? So that is a much broader definition, right? So that whole sentence becomes idea number one for you, right? So while you're defining, you will start putting in your idea inside that. What is your idea? Your idea now is to teach and educate people below poverty line. So now the definition is clear. You're able to identify the cohort of people whom you're going to address. People below poverty line as defined by Indian government or as defined by US government, right? So because that changes. People below poverty line in India is somebody who's not able to earn more than 40 or 50 rupees a day, right? Whereas people in US, it might be $10 a day, right? So, or $100 a day, I don't know. So that depends. So, what do you mean by poverty itself is a big question mark. People who have, or even basic, people who don't have houses to live in, or people who don't have food to eat, or people who don't have clothes to wear, or people who don't have water to drink. What is your definition of poverty? As soon as you define poverty in that way, you are bringing the end user into the picture. Until you do that, your problem statement is not defined. So we are going to eradicate and we are going to help people suffering from poverty and who do not have safe drinking water. Right? That is your definition. Now you can ideate because now your ideas will be revolving around what? People who do not have safe drinking water only. So your ideas will be let me dig a well, or let me put taps, or let me send distillery water to them, or I don't know what. But all your ideas will be revolving around that. And for every idea, you're going to have a prototype, and you're going to test it, and whether it's going to fail or not. If you're not able to prototype test, and if that whole process is not working, you need to go and redefine, right? And then go out and say, I'm not going to dig a well, but I'm going to bring a water pipeline and I'm going to test, and keep on going, right? So that is how the process works. Is this clear? That's why idea comes later. So when we started our workshop today in the morning, I just said idea because that's where we go, right? Oh, let me build a drone, right? A lot of us we do that. Like we are tech people. Oh, let me build a drone. Then we start thinking, okay, now the drone is flying. Let me put on camera. Oh, now that it has a camera, so let me send it on the streets and then go and measure traffic and then do something. That's not how. Maybe you're able to do something, but then that's not typically how a product should be developed, right? You're just playing around with technology to learn, and then you stumble upon solutions. That is serendipity. That's by chance, not by choice, right? So please understand that. Instead, you should have started with the problem saying that there's huge traffic jams in Bangalore, and how do I solve it? And then you start going and understanding these signals are the problem, and then I'm going to help uh, ease the traffic through various means. And one of the means is access to technology through drones, right? And footage and AI and all of that. Other thing might be just make the roads better without potholes. Maybe the traffic will ease. So both of these ideas might work. So you need to check that, right? So now, without much ado, I'm going to now step into, once you're done with design thinking, once you have your ideas ready, you need to prototype, correct? So in the design thinking process, we have ideated. Now we need to prototype. So just before we start prototyping, we go and ask that big question: what is that one thing that is going to solve the problem most effectively? Or what is that one thing that is needed, which will benefit the end user to the maximum? Or what is that one feature without which the problem statement will never get addressed? That becomes your primary goal of developing your product. And that question must be asked. Once you're done with that, we then go out and say, what benefits can we bring out to the customer, and what features will bring those benefits out? So there are two technical terms here, what we call as features and benefits, which we will discuss right now. Okay. So at this point, is there anybody who wants to share about your idea or about your project, so that I'll use that to define these terminologies, and it will help you structure the product features, right? So is there anybody who can share their thoughts about this?
Sir, my project is a smart. Hello,
Sorry,
can you able to hear me?
I can hear you.
So my project is a smart mask. So
Smart mask, okay.
it is basically used to detect with oxygen, which oxygen that contains.
Okay. I can't hear you.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, it's basically like first, like we have like.
Okay, I'm not able to hear you, Sunil. Are you able to hear me, people? Rest of you? Hello?
Hello, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay,
rest of you, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Sunil, I think you have we have some issue with the connection. So,
yes, sir. No, yes, sir. That first thing that is smart mask. What the thing that we're going to contain it is first
no, 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 no. Wait. Sunil, I'm not asking you the solution. I just wanted to, just understand what is the project that you're working on. Let me just hold it for a minute, uh, right? So, is there anybody else who's working on a project that would like to share? I just want to understand. Okay, one is Sunil is working on smart mask. Is there any other project that you're working on? Anybody? Hello. Fuel cell electric vehicles. Okay, somebody is saying fuel cell electric vehicles. Okay, so then there is a smart mask. So let us take any of these examples and then understand the difference between product and features here. So let me go back to my slide and can you see the Excel sheet, everyone? So I have pointed out this, the difference between a feature and a benefit, right? Can you see the difference? And then can somebody address, when you talk of an automobile, the feature is reverse automatic braking. And the benefit you get is enhanced safety while backing up the car, right? So can somebody then tell me, what do you mean by a benefit and what do you mean by a feature? A toy robot, built-in rechargeable battery. The benefit is convenience or ease of use. So technically, in design thinking process, what do we identify? Let me rephrase the question. If this is what we call as a feature, and if this is the feature and this is the benefit, from design thinking process, what do we get? Do we get the feature or do we get the benefit out?
So I feel from the defining part, we define the benefit. That's actually the problem that we are solving. And feature is that ideation phase where we where we actually find a way to get the problem into a
Correct.
feature.
Correct. Correct. You're absolutely right. So here we talk about design thinking process to identify something called as value proposition. Please remember, a benefit is nothing but a list of value propositions that your solution or a problem is offering to the end user. Always remember, we talk with respect to the end user. So now with this statement, for every of your project, whatever you're doing, right? If you know the benefit that you are passing on to the end user, there is very little ambiguity from your side on what feature you should start with, right? So this simple step would address the questions that were asked in the beginning of the workshop. I think Rajwal had asked a question, and then we also had somebody else, I think Sai Akash, asking the same question on how are we overdoing it? Are we adding too many features or too many things, right? So with this, now let us break down and understand what we mean by a product feature. A product feature is a specific piece of functionality that has a corresponding benefit or a set of benefits for the user. Benefits are the value that users gain from using that functionality, right? So the typical process, which is mostly designed for failure, is that we design the product with features and then hope that some people will benefit out of it and get value out of it, and therefore they will pay for the product, right? This is the reverse cycle that most of us as designers and developers do. What design thinking and this approach is doing is it's flipping this over the head, right? First, we are identifying the value. Then we are seeing that people will definitely pay for this value. And if, to solve this value, we need to give this proposition to them, which will translate to a feature. And to make that feature happen, you will need certain set of functionalities and certain technologies, and you use that to build the product. It's completely reverse, right? So design thinking will get us to value proposition, and once you get the value proposition and benefit, you're 95% done, right? Maybe then the rest 5% is hard work, where we think that that is 95% of the work of designing the product, making the product. That's the last phase, the end goal, right? So with this, very clearly, if you look at this, I don't know where, I think it was another slide. For instance, right? So if these infographics that we have will probably help you. Right. So let me just share this image with you. So when you're designing a product, right? So we look at something like this. right? So we have features, which is essentially saying that, it's made of waterproof cloth, or it's made of wood, and it's made of, it's unbreakable, and all of that. The benefit is that the device that we have will protect us from sun and rain. That's the benefit. And people will pay for that. If it's protecting you completely or protecting you halfway through, whatever, that is where people will pay for. So identifying benefits become absolutely important before we go anywhere else in designing the features, right? Whether we want waterproof or not becomes a feature or a functionality only if the benefit is to protect you from rain. If the benefit is removed, then maybe you just need a piece of cloth that is there on top of the umbrella, and you don't really need a resin or a waterproof cloth. Huge difference in functionality, right? Similarly, if it's just protection from rain, you can have a transparent piece of plastic that is on top of the umbrella, so that it just stops the rain, right? But if you want to do both, then you need to find an opaque object which is also waterproof, right? So this is, I think, will answer most of your questions in the beginning of the workshop. What feature to choose and when, right? So with this, now let me go back to this uh, slide. So anybody who wants to come forward, so this, please note down this structure. I'm also going to share this Excel sheet link for you. This will be a beginning of the assignment for you, right? So a very simple exercise that I'll give you, right? When we're doing design thinking, we always do design thinking with respect to one person or a group of people who are similar. We call them as the end user or personas or customer segment, depending on various things. So, for instance, it will be either a student or a teacher or a banker or a bike rider or something like that. And Sunil was mentioning about a mask, right? So, who is the end user?
So, I'm focusing on the people who are working daily with
People,
working people. See,
working people, working people, people who step out of the house, right?
yes,
So,
sir.
you are talking about working people. Okay, anybody else who would benefit from this? This is enough. Benefit.
Voice is not audible, sir.
Sorry. Am I not audible, people? Akhil, am I audible clearly or am I not? I just want to understand because.
Yes, Arvind, you're audible actually. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, Sunil, I think you have issue with your internet because even last time when you were trying to speak, I was not able to hear you. So, fine. So now uh, let me identify a problem statement, or I want somebody who can really work through the idea that you have here, because otherwise it will be very difficult for us to take the session forward, because I don't want to assume a project and do it, because you will not be able to relate to it, right? So let us pick up a project that you people are working on, or a product that you're trying to develop, and build on this thing. Otherwise, it will not be directly correlated. At least one team will be able to benefit, if not anybody, from this exercise, right? So anybody wants to come forward and give me your project idea or the people you're trying to solve or something that you're trying to build.
So I'm not working on a project currently, but there is something that I've been conceptualizing for a few days now. So should I
Sure.
share that?
Sure.
Okay. So it's basically a social networking app that is directed to a special niche that is travelers. So here's the prop. So here's something that I initially conceptualized, which I later turned into a social networking app. Um, for instance, let's say we are going on a trip with my friends, or let's say we are having any event or anything. So what I see is that we do not get an. It's basically about getting an immersive experience of an event or a trip or something like that. So what you do is, for an event, let's say you go for an event. Here, everyone takes pictures and videos. So what this app does is kind of associate them all in okay, let me just rephrase it. So it's basically something. Let's say you go to an
No,
event.
I understood. I understood. Yeah, you can mute yourself. Yeah. So I understood what Prajwal is trying to talk about. So essentially, the problem or the persona, the problem statement is about travel, travelers, right? This is what we are trying to first address. Now, the question mark here will be whether they are or traveling within the country or traveling abroad and things like that. It doesn't matter at this point. But the question is, what is that benefit that you're giving them? What is the value proposition for travelers? Give me one value proposition. I don't want hundreds. Give me one benefit of using your app.
So it will give you an immersive experience of the whole travel. For instance, 10 years down the line, when you're revisiting your travel, you won't be just visiting the pictures. You'll have like a whole portfolio as to this was day one. These pictures you took, your friends took, the people in the call. Like it won't be like your pictures with you, others' pictures with them. It'll be like a collective experience that you can share, that you can revisit 10 years down the line.
So, Prajwal, you mentioned the word immersive experience, right? So, immersive experience is not a benefit according to me. It is just a fancy word, right? What I, as an end user, will understand is that I can collaborate with co-travelers who are going with me to create experiences, right? So that's how I should see it. So one of the key benefit that I have is that it's not just my travel, but it is as a group that we have traveled, the memories of that can be saved. So now uh, we are other benefit that I'm going to give you is I'm going to help you create memories out of these things. So any other thing that you can bring forth?
So the major problem that I was thinking, so it's only been like a week or two that I've been thinking about this. But the
Doesn't
major
matter.
problem set was that all the files and the pictures and the media that you have, they're unstructured. You have some, they have some. It's not time bound. Like they can share with the pictures with you, but they'll be stored in some other folders. So what this does is this will kind of curate it as per your needs, your pictures based on a timeline, that so that let's say when you're revisiting this photos, you have like, okay, so we started from here, then we are here. It won't be like you see the first picture, it was the starting, and the second picture is the end. So it'll be like you'll be able to kind of revisit the whole journey that you overtook.
Is this okay? What I've written? Store, organize, curate, travel.
Yeah, so this is basically the essence.
Right. So this is now, you can now technically define two things here, right? So immersive experience is something that I can't even define. So I have broken down immersive experience into two broad things here, right? One is to the traveler solo, or the traveler. I'll call it as the persona, and here it is the travel group. Correct? There are two definitive people who are benefiting from this. One is the individual traveler himself or herself and their experience of the journey and their travel. And also, apart from that, they traveled as a group, so it gives an opportunity to share and collaborate all of these things of the trip of each traveler with each other in a particular way, right? So I would then reorganize. I will already know that what is more fundamental is this. This is the sequence. Am I right? Delete row and delete this row also. I'm going to start with the traveler, that is a traveler, one traveler, right? A traveler and the travel group. Two people are there. Let's not complicate it further, right? So now, what is that benefit or value you're giving is travel memories. Am I right? And then I'm allowing.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you're right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just said that you're right. So that's the plan.
Okay, I think you have echo, Prajwal. So I would urge you to, keep your speakers off as much as possible. Maybe you can type in and then speak. I'm getting a lot of echo when you turn on your mic. Okay. So anyway, so we are right. We are in that flow. For now, I'm helping Prajwal's project, but everybody else, even Sunil and somebody else who's talking about cells, define it this way, right? Give a persona very clearly, and the feature is going to be created. So, what are the features that we are talking about? Store, organize, and curate is not a value proposition, right? It is also a value proposition. We can mention it because people tend to understand these technical terms, but it's more of a feature, right? So, you can here. And now I'm going to go out and say, right? Now we go and say share. How else can you establish collaboration? Share and anything else? Is that the only feature collaboration can bring about? Or is there anything else? So I'm ideating right now with features. You said that people as groups can, come together and experience memories together, right? So in your particular solution, what is the value proposition you're giving me? That I can share my memories with them and they can share my memories with them? Or is there anything more, Prajwal?
So you can add to it. Like they'll have a whole structured memory. Like won't be just them sharing the pictures. It will be curation of those memories. Like you'll have like, okay, so we started a travel here, we stopped it, like something like you add the map feature in it, so you can map your day according to that. So first day you did this and all that. Along with that, the pictures you took at a particular place, along with the locations and a time phase that at 3 p.m. you were here. So like, so that 3 years down the line you'll have like kind of an immersive experience of that whole travel instead of just swiping the pictures.
Understood. I'm just taking a lot of ideas from other people also. Communicate real time through. I think we are good enough. I mean, like we have enough, and it'll go on and forever. Otherwise, but this is good enough. So now, Pranav, I've heard, Prajwal, I've heard you, but the thing is, I know you're talking about curation continuously and keep it in a particular structure. But what my endeavor here is to help you develop it. So when I say curation, if you're a developer and I give you an input, or you have five developers working with you, and you give them an input, right? I want uh, a curation uh, algorithm to be developed. What will they do? Can they have a direction, or I want? Can you show me a curation screen, right? How it's going to look, right? So we either have to do that or this. So when you say curate, curate what? Curate a particular experience, right? So what I mean by that is curate a particular experience is the user benefit is give me all beach travels, right? And you get everything together in a way. So now I'm talking about data points, right? So when you talk of curation, it's very broad based. I mean, you're talking of something like Google Photos, right? Google Photos is very much close to what you're talking about. I don't know if you've used it or not. It's a free app, but then it gives you a few things. It helps me get memories. If my children are growing up, right from their birth till wherever they are right now, all the best photos are put together and it makes a nice little collage video. It's nice to share and nice to experience. So that's the curated experience that it is giving. Now sometimes it throws up something called like beach, and all the sunsets that we have seen on the beach is in one folder. Right? I understand that you're also trying to bring about that, but then the problem with Google Photos is that it curates it for you and it does not give you a chance to customize. But here, maybe you could give an option of what you call as curate. And people, I hope you're following. I'm making sense here. It's a little complicated problem statement that I have picked up here. So it's a little difficult to do this. So in this now, if I have to go out and develop a particular flow, right? Uh, what is the personas that we're talking? Which is a highest priority, or which is very complicated, right? So this is the example of the above point I'm giving actually. Give me all beach travels. Curate a particular experience is the feature. Now, how do I go out and do it? So now, Pranav, you have to tell me what is that one feature that is absolutely required for you to launch the product in all of these things. Have I lost you people? Uh,
No, sir.
Mhm. Can you tell me, Prajwal? Am I calling you Pranav from that time? Okay, Prajwal, can you tell me which one is the most important thing that you would want to talk about? Is it first and foremost? Is it uh, a single traveler or a group of travelers that you would want to be the core benefit of your product? You should be able to answer that. I know your answer is going to be like all of this is needed, but I cannot allow for that because I want you to have one base user flow and then only to build upon that for the next other things. It will all branch out. So can somebody add to that, or maybe we can, if Prajwal is not able to contribute on the thought process, anybody else can just we can go out and create this project further, no problem. Which of these features do you think? I think collaborative part of it is very important. Okay, great. So collaborative part of it. So now if we talk of thing, I take photos and all these photos get uploaded to the app, and they take photos, all these photos get uploaded to the app. One of the primary features is going to be for that particular thing, all of us can have one folder, and then all the photos of each user goes into that folder. Could that be one of the first things that we can develop?
Yes, sir. Along with that, the feature that we can communicate within ourselves, because Google Photos that doesn't allow you to have a collaborative group where you can actually, where you can, it's like adding that thing to the social networking and the social media part of it.
Absolutely. Agreed. So here, communicate. So what do you mean by communicate? Communicate real time as a chat or a video, or is it something more like the communicate in terms of how, right? So that becomes very important. Build an itinerary, maybe, right? So collaboration, even before you start, we can say each one of you will go and pinpoint a geographical location, and then all of you, say for example, four of you are planning to go to Goa, right? So now each one of you will fix the date. So your app now, the user flow will be discussed tomorrow, not today. So how this product is going to get evolved is that first and foremost, the screen is going to open up and say which location are you going to go, right? Are you going to travel? That's the first pop-up. The next question will be which location. So you say Goa, right? So then the screen or the map of Goa comes up. Then it says which dates, right? Starting from 25th to 28th. You choose those dates, right? Then automatically your backend can pull up data for what all are open or what are special events that are happening during those days in Goa, right? So to do just this much, you have sufficient feature complexity already that you've brought into your system. But you're very clearly identifying the thread, right? What you need to do, irrespective of everything, is that are you going to a certain location? The answer is yes. You name the location. What is your dates? The answer is yes. You name the dates. Now, the third question is, are you traveling with other people? If the answer is yes, then please add them, right? You add their email IDs or their profile names from social media, and then they automatically get tagged into your app, right? So I'm just verbally telling the flow. But tomorrow we are going to actually build out this flow in the form of a what you call as a wireframe structure, right? User flow. I'm going to define the user flow tomorrow to kind of bring this out, which we will talk in detail, tomorrow. So what I'm trying to say here is, where was I? I am able to build itinerary. That's absolutely important, and this is also a feature here, right? Even if you're a single user, this feature will be there, and it will double up as a group also. So here what happens if you're building the build itinerary feature, the same feature can develop for a group also. It doesn't matter. It just you need the add the collaborative block to that. So now what happens is if you're as a group, then all of you can then once you have formed the group, or if you have not formed the group, doesn't matter. All of you can go and pinpoint, choose a particular date and pinpoint, I want to go there, I want to go here, I want to go here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then all 4 of you can do 1, 2, 3, 4 and press OK. And then the law of averages comes in. And then your AI and machine learning algorithm, whatever you're using, will kick in and say, all of you want to do this. So here is my suggestion on how you should go about your trip, right? And tidbits and all of that. So this way, I can also see huge revenue generation opportunities along the way when you're making the recommendations. So this much alone, if is there, can you launch the app? That's the question that you need to ask, right? Everything else, you throw it out of the window for now. I'm not asking you to launch the app. I am just asking you to say, is this a functional set where a certain problem is getting solved? What is that certain problem? Starting a trip, planning, adding people to the trip, and planning where all you will go during your stay for those 4 days in that particular town. This much is done. So this is even not retrospective. This is real time. Then every time they go there, they click photos and all of that. This planned event becomes a memory, and then everything gets added there, stack by stack by stack, stack by stack by stack. If you're able to achieve this much structure into your workflow, now you can go and add other features. Like, we can add a chat window, we can add a video link, or we can add a, uh, other features, right? So is this clear? So now the question mark is, which is, oh wow, huge thunderbolt. Okay, fine. So where was I? Which one do you think is complicated from your perspective? So now, how do you decide? This is maybe high. Curate a particular experience is maybe low. Communicate with chat is maybe high. Communicate with video is low. Map retrospective is maybe low, because first let us look at creating experiences, then we'll look at curating experiences, right? So for me, the priority, I have sorted it, Prajwal and others can sort it however you want. I have sorted the feature priority as forward going, not retrospective. That is, I want to start adding data into my portal, into my app. So I want people to start using my app first. I don't want them to add photos that we've taken somewhere else into my app and ask it to work on it. No, I want to actually create content by using our app or our platform. So I have set the priority as very high for things that are forward going, right? So very high is all about forward. That is, I'm able to share the content with my co-travelers, and I'm able to build itinerary with my co-travelers, right? And I'm able to chat with them, and I'm able to organize. Again, organize is retrospective. So even this is not very high at this point. So now with these, now we go and understand how complex it is, feature complexity. So how do you determine what is complex, what is not? Can somebody tell me? Are you guys in Bangalore or some other city? Are you guys sleeping or awake? Mumbai, acha. Kolkata, wow, okay. So oh, Delhi. So there must be somebody from Chennai. So we have everybody from all metros, all big people. Patna, okay. Kerala. Kerala is not a city. Cool. Anyway, doesn't matter. So come. complexity might be from different aspects, right? Yes. So what is that? How do you define? So because this was the question, right, Sai Akash, you were telling like now that we have identified so many problems, I have kind of eliminated one aspect of it where you prioritize a certain direction of the app or solution. I have prioritized the forward going steps. That is, I want all my travelers and all my users to be starting creating content on my platform. So I'm not bothered about curation at this point. I'm more bothered about creation, right? So I am looking at building itinerary, I'm looking at building communication and all of that. So what, according to me, is extremely complicated will be a factor of what is the question. You know, what becomes a factor for you to determine which feature is complex or which feature to start with? That's my question. So this is a simple tool that you can probably use to address your question, right? The tool says value versus complexity quadrant, right? So this is more from a perspective of business, but instead of business, you can also look at business value is how much revenue you can generate, right? But just value, if you remove the business word from here, then it becomes just value, value for the end user. How much valuable is that feature for the end user? That's what you need to see. Because if it is too valuable for the end user, then automatically business value happens, right? But either ways, let's call it as business value and let us call it as complexity slash effort, right? And because we are still students and things like that, I would also call complexity slash competency slash effort, right? So that also becomes a very important parameter in terms of uh, uh, us, right? And I have not yet included the cost element into this because if competency is high, that is, you as a team have very high competency, then your cost will be low because maybe you will be able to write down that algorithm yourself quickly. So you're not spending money, you're spending time, right? Just effort. And the effort will be less because you already know the subject matter. So among all the features that we are talking about, just look at this matrix again, you know, business value, value that you're giving the customer, and the effort or complexity of you uh, need you that is needed to be contributed by you is low, right? That is, it's a very easy thing, right? You just plug a Google Maps API, for instance, and you know how to do it. And the value for somebody to be able to say, I'm going to go on entire Goa map pointing up with some 10 points to visit is huge value for the end customer, right? So the business value is high and plugging in a Google Maps is easy, right? So that's something that I will definitely start with. I will prioritize that first. Whereas a machine learning algorithm, which says that out of these 10 places, you visit these 4 places because each one of you, your likes and dislikes are already captured. And we recommend based on that. Somebody likes to go have a beer, somebody likes to do snorkeling, somebody just likes to chill during the afternoon in the room, right? And somebody likes to go pubbing in the night, right? So all of these are different priorities. So what now, why I'm talking of these things is that tomorrow I'm going to add these elements into that Excel sheet, right? Tomorrow I'm going to go and add what are the attributes of each element, right? So now anyway, with this quadrant, Sai Akash and Prajwal and Sunil and all of you people in this session, you can now go and determine what you can do and what you cannot do. Because maybe Sunil has a great idea of building a mask with a sensor and sending it to the cloud and blah, blah, blah. But the problem with that is, first and foremost, who needs it most and why do they need it, right? So maybe if I'm a marathon runner and I need to track my parameters very closely, but at the same time, I have the mandate of wearing a mask. Because I wear a mask, my lungs are more stressed to pull air from through the mask, right? So therefore, for somebody like that, a signal just to say that your VO2 max is dropping or your oxygen level is dropping, so just stop running now, right? That one trigger, if the mask can provide, then great, because then I don't have to invest in a big watch or something like that, which is costing 50,000 rupees. Maybe I buy a mask which is 500 rupees, and then every time I finish my run, I remove the filter, throw the filter, and put a new filter, and then still keep running, right? So maybe that is great. But then, does Sunil and team have the competency to build that sensor, or do they have the money to source it? That's the question mark. If the answer is yes to that, then yes, that feature can be incorporated. If the answer is no, then we go back to the drawing board and say, what else can I do, which where I can go and evaluate my product or solution, right? So similarly, we talk about here in your Excel sheet this feature complexity. So how do we define the complexity number? The same chart that I showed you, right? If the complexity is very high and the value is very low, then we give a number saying, build itinerary. I think the complexity is very low. It's not very difficult because it's just a simple SQL table or something database where people just say this city, this city, this city, this date, this date, this. Just two parameters in building an itinerary: location and date and time, right? If you have date and time and location, your itinerary is done, right? So it's very easy to build something like this, right? Now, so it's quite obvious that this is the first feature that we will incorporate in our app. Next, let's go to the next very high, share. Share is again very low or maybe medium. Actually, it's low. It's not very difficult to develop something like a share feature where there is a common database where if you have taken a photograph from the phone, you say this photo is tick and add to that folder. So it's just a primary key mapping. Everybody else who have access to that folder can see these photographs. So sharing is very, very easy. Build itinerary is again low, right? So you can go about and start this tomorrow, right? It's very easy to build something like this. Now let's go to the high, communicate with chat. Now the complexity is medium and communicate with chat is very much required. So here, build itinerary, complexity is low if it is just keying in the places. It kind of becomes medium if you want it to be mapped by Google Maps, right? So because you need to understand the API feature, pulling it, plugging it. Then the complexity becomes very, very high if you are then building itinerary based on the locations everybody gives. If you get recommendations. So there is a feature called people. I hope you're following or you're not following. Please let me know if I've really gone off track. So here, build itinerary. Recommendation, right? So you also get recommendations by the app. So this is a huge priority actually. People will love it, right? As a benefit, value proposition is very high, but complexity is also very high because you need AI, ML, and all of that. So this is how your matrix will look like. So whichever is very high and low or medium can be started off immediately. That is the first user flow you will generate and understand how that feature will work. Okay, so then that base is set. Now you go and say initial iteration was just name the cities. The next iteration is pinpoint the city. Then once the city zooms in the app, then you pinpoint locations. And already there are red dots which are pointing out, which says that people who are already using your app have gone there and loved that place because you're rating that point. So then you go out and add, when you build itinerary for recommendations, you can go and add rate experiences, right? So it just goes on, people. I mean, like for 100 hours, you can keep writing here. And this is all through my imagination. But you need to actually do this by doing empathy. If you take this sheet, sit with people and say, what would you love? What is there? Or if you are an avid traveler, you might be able to rate experiences becomes a huge feature for input for recommendation. So these two will be related to each other, right? This experience and this experience are actually the build itinerary recommendation feature will become hugely successful if rate experience feature is working brilliantly. Because as people rate the experience of a particular recommendation, then automatically your app will start recommending that more to more people, right? So then people using the app will be more successful in having a great trip. And if they are, then your app succeeds. So is this clear? So this is something else. Sorry, this is some wrong information. That's it. So do you get it? So now at this point, I think I've kind of communicated. It was I'm sorry, it was a little off structured today because the problem statement that given I picked up today was a little complicated problem. I deliberately picked this and I did not pick up Sunil's project because Sunil's project was more specific to a hardware, and the questions then that will be asked there is uh, purely technical questions on development of the hardware, which I wanted to avoid in this workshop a little bit because this will give you a more bigger perspective. And tomorrow, if it is Prajwal's project or not, irrespective, I'm going to use this as a base to move further, maybe. Right? So, and also if you have other projects, you can do. So now at this point, I hope you are able to now see how we are able to clearly map what features are important and what features are not important. Next, what features are very important but I can't build it, and what features are very important and I can build it, right? So it's absolutely logical for anyone to go with what is very important and what you can do, right? And then finally find some collaborators to take it forward. And also, mind you, at this point, the ethos of your app might also kind of start changing, right? You might have started off saying that I want to build great experiences. I want to build an app for that. But then you please understand, to reach that point, curate and custom. This is the ultimate goal, right? He had, who Prajwal had. So this is like very, very high, I can call it. I don't care. But then it's also very, very high to build it, right? So I can't just do it. So what I have done is I have just broken this point down, curate and customize experience. I've broken down into 5 pieces. And as I go forward, I would like to break this down into 100 pieces, right? As I go, I'd like to break it down into 100 pieces and start just adding together. And eventually, when I put everything together, you can go out and tell people that this app is going to curate and customize your travel experience like no one, no, like bar none, right? That's my app. Come try it out. But until that point, you go and be more specific to users, saying that boys and girls, you want to plan a trip to Goa. This is the place you do it, right? And let's start from there, right? So, and then after 10 years down the line, when you people are in different parts of the world, you share that particular link and say, people, we did this Goa trip 10 years ago. You want to repeat it? Here is here is the story, and let's do it. And then the app takes over and does everything for you, right? That's your ultimate goal. But then to go there, I think you have a journey to make, right? So from that perspective, I am just putting this out this way. Great. So then I think there are some comments that coming in by Rutvik. Um, other than recommending the app, can suggest of other alternatives to existing itinerary as the world is so dynamic. You will never know what is opening. Yeah, I agree. Rutvik, that's a very valid point. What I'm saying is the app can do it. But my question is not that. That's a great benefit you will get people. If I say Goa, you say let go to Las Vegas, right? Or if I say Goa, you will say go to Pondicherry. I understand, but then the app should be able to do it, right? It's not you sitting behind and giving the recommendation. So you need to make the app that intelligent, that powerful. It should have that much information, that much data. So what we're trying to do is how are we going to reach this point? The world is so dynamic, and so is your app, right? And if the app is dynamic, then it is going to be extremely complicated to develop. So I'm trying to make it simple first. So I follow the principle called KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? So do first what you can do and then add to it, right? So this is the ultimate goal, Rutvik, and that's what Prajwal also started with. But I have been kind of trying to push it into pieces and pieces and pieces where priority is very high and feature complexity is low. Your goal is to find those things and start with that, package it neatly, and then slowly move up in the complexity level. Only if the priority is high. If the priority is very low, we'll see that later. We will bring that later, and at some stage that priority will become very high. That's when you need to trigger. So you should keep this sheet forever and keep building. And once it is done, you can start marking them green, 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 or give them a number and sort it out. You automatically know what is the work for the next 15 days for your team to do, right? So this is how we do the identification of product features and prioritize them. So the key word here is prioritizing features. And why? There is an absolute reason why, right? There are two elements we need to consider. One is the end user, and the other one is you yourself as a developer, right? End user will need the moon, right? Like Rutvik wants this in the app, right? Existing itinerary, as the world is dynamic, you will never know what is opening and what is running or not. I agree, right? If I had that information with me, I will use that app. But today, I don't have that information with me, and you don't have the capability of to give that to me, right? If you had it, then the app would be great. I mean, it would be as powerful as a Google Photos or as powerful as Google or Instagram or whatever you want to call it. But to get there, this is a high value proposition you're trying to address. But it's extremely complicated and it's a journey to make. So I'm trying to keep those steps, right? So brilliant. I mean, let's work on this and take it forward. So now, as a quick thing, we have about 10 minutes left, and I guess more or less, I don't know where my slides are. More or less, I think I have covered what I wanted to speak today, right? I wanted to speak about design thinking approach I did, and problems, users, and data. So what I mean by data here is that we didn't talk really much about data today. I will talk about it tomorrow. So in case what I mean by data here is build itinerary. When I say what do we need, right? That is data. So that I will do tomorrow, right? So I'll just give you a tidbit on what data is. Build itinerary. I of course need location, date, time, and then I also need you know, map, right? Map coordinates, and then mode of transport. All of these. I mean, like it can go on and go on and on. But I think this much is enough for. And then maybe you can say budget, but budget is not really needed right now. So forget it. If I have this information collected and if I use this information to build my itinerary, I think I'm good enough. So now I need to see from where I can get this data in my app or in my ecosystem and where this data is redundant. Once you start putting these things together, automatically your app design will become so robust that you can just keep plugging in information. Location, for instance, if I say Goa, immediately I can plug in 20 APIs for location support, and they can all come in and pop up. Like for example, there's an app called Foursquare. I don't know if that still exists. That used to do this, right? I say a particular place, and then it should go and tell where I can go party, do whatever, blah blah blah, right? So similarly, date and time. Date and time can be a precursor to go and see whether there's a lockdown or not, right? So there could be some APIs that you can connect for that. Then mode of transport is again very important, because your system is planning. If you have to go from Kalangut to somewhere else, then you better know how you're going. Are you going by a bike, or are you going by a bus? Are you walking up? So that, based on that, your itinerary can get planned. Because if you have a car to go, then it will say 45 minutes. And if you are walking up, it says 3 hours, right? So that will help as a core element of planning the itinerary, or saying that itinerary will work or not, right? So that's what your app is going to do. So now with this as an assignment for you people, I'm going to share this. Share this and give you this link here, right? So just take this link up and just make a copy of this maybe and fill this up. Whatever is, and what is most important is persona, right? In this particular experiment, I very clearly divided into two pieces. And I am going to focus more on a single traveler first for ease of user flow. And then when 4 users are doing that separately, and then there is one primary mapping to them, then automatically collaboration happens. The travel group has happened already. So I can consider travel group as another single traveler in many ways, but the data of the travel group is a collation of 4 travelers, as simple as that. So from a product design perspective or a app design perspective, a traveler and traveler group is more or less the same persona, but certain features are enabled only if it's a group, and certain features are not enabled if it is not a group. For example, chat or a video call feature. If you're a solo traveler, then it's kind of ridiculous to have a call with yourself, but maybe you can record your calls, right? You can do a vlog or something like that. So it goes on. So cool. I think from my side, I have kind of thought through this whole thing and shared it with you. I hope you guys found it useful and effective. I'm sorry if I was all over the place because I was trying to kind of make it a little different from the previous workshop, but then I think I was able to add some value. So maybe a couple of more minutes. Any questions for today? But I strongly urge you to go back, and it's a very simple table, as you can see, just 5 columns. And in that, at least I would want you to fill up column 1, column 2, and column 3, maybe 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 for sure. 5 is highly specific to your team, right? But feature priority is not dependent on your team, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4 will be more or less standard for everybody. Feature complexity will change from team to team depending on whom do you have, what do they want from the workshop. I mean, not from the workshop, from the product. That's the question, right? So I'll give you time to tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Just put this down. Even if it takes a little time for you, just do it and come by so that I can make the session much more interactive, and not on this particular problem statement, your own problem statement. Somebody spoke of a mask, somebody spoke of a fuel cell. So you need to go back and understand, if it's very hardware specific, what should be the user flow, right? Not of the product itself, but of the solution flow, right? So if you're talking of fuel cell, then your project should consider not just the fuel cell, but how the raw material is coming in, what is the best way to achieve this as a business. Again, you have to, this is a very clear business case for me. where it's a business as well as an app and an ecosystem. But a fuel cell is a product. A mask is a product. So now you go and decide what feature should I have in that and what should I not have. Fuel cell is more of an R&D oriented project where you're developing the project, but a mask, you can identify what sensor should it have, what data should it transmit, and for whom. So based on that, maybe a single sensor mask could be very valuable, like I said, for a marathon runner, right? But the same thing might not be useful for somebody else. And a mask with a sensor might be meaningless for almost 80% of the population. So you need to be extremely careful in choosing whose problem you're trying to solve. So Sunil's statement was that I'm trying to build a mask which has sensors and things like that. I don't want that way. I want it to be specific to the end user so that it becomes clear what's your market size. It becomes clear what is the kind of features that the product will have, right? So with this, I'm going to end my monologue at least today. And as a new product, software-based project is more potential than hardware-based project in terms of success in the marketplace. There is nothing like that, right? There is nothing like that. Sunil is asking me a new product project based on software or new project based on hardware, which is a matter of more success in the market. I don't know, because if you're able to build a hardware, then I think the success of that on the long run is going to be huge. Because if you name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 companies in the world, the richest companies in the world, they're all hardware driven, right? Be it ExxonMobil, be it Shell, be it Reliance, be it Tesla Motors, be it Apple, so on and so forth, right? And then there are other big daddies like Facebook, Google, who are more software driven. But still, the largest of the largest companies in the world are always going to be real companies in terms of hardware building companies, right? Like Apple, for instance. So that's a question that, and it's probably not so important for you to think that way, because you're not chasing success. You're chasing solving a problem for a particular mass of people. So if you're chasing that, then success will follow, and maybe you'll build hardware and software both. But if you're chasing just only one aspect of whether my project will succeed or not, based on that, should I build a hardware or software? It might not be that logical to start that way. Cool. So from my side, I guess you guys got this link, this particular what you call as whatever that is. Akhil, this group is to get future updates from this workshop. So Akhil has probably gone out and created a group. So I will share this small little Excel sheet there. You can use this as a template and create your own. All right. So with this, thank you, people. I'm done from my side. Any questions very quickly?
So now, like related to the mask, now I got a like idea what I need exactly to solve actually. I don't know, like for it is basically full of hardware, the sensors part, and the material that what we're going to use for the mask. No,
Yes,
I
yes,
got
that comes in your complexity part and priority part, right? So if there is a particular sensor that you need, then you need to understand how complicated it is to buy it or sell it or make it, and then go back and see if this sensor is there, what benefit my end customer gets. If the sensor is not there, what benefit my end customer will get. So in the end of the day, what benefit are you going to give, right? So you have still not answered that question, Sunil. That's why I took up another project, because you said I want to build a mask, but I wanted to know what problem you're trying to solve, right? What you gave me is a solution. I was not interested in the solution. Here, when Prajwal was talking about, Prajwal was very specifically talking about curate and customize experience for people, for travelers, right? So there the end user was clear and the benefit was clear, right? There was an aspect of curation and aspect of customization. there was no solution there. The solution was not there. The solution we are trying to find now in features, right? It was more of what I'm trying to solve. Right? So here I want to build a mask, or I want a solution which will help COVID-19 patients breathe better, or I want to build a solution for runners or for office goers. You said office goers, right? So then, so now you need to go and work on that, saying why would a office goer need a mask with a sensor, first of all? What problem is it? If the sensor is there, what happens? If the sensor is not there, what happens? If you can answer that, then you automatically will get your features. Okay. And I want you to answer it on the Excel sheet, not to me now.
Tomorrow I'll answer.
Yes. Great. So people, I guess we are almost overshot on the time. If there are any specific things that you want to say, if not, then if you can take it tomorrow, then we can do it.
Yeah, sure. So guys, please do join on the WhatsApp group, and I will share all the details there. And meanwhile, you can use the same link for tomorrow. This is the same link for the next 3 days. So please do join tomorrow also. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Thank you, Arvind. Thank you so much.
Thank you.